You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cedarquist, joined this week by Oliver Camacho and guest co-host Michael Rice. All right, in this episode, the English choral tradition. Is it misogynist? Is it harmful? Is it ageist? Countertenor, choral director, and friend of the show, Christopher Lowry, has a surprising and galvanizing take in our free throw segment. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, hey, don't bully Norma, or she'll do something terrible to your kids. Find out who else is PO'd and how much it's going to cost the Met. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Stitcher and Spotify. You click follow, Apple Podcasts, super simple. Just hit the plus sign. Send us a voice memo. Email us your hot takes. It all goes to operaboxscore@gmail.com and comes back to you in the form of the OBS beer coaster and the OBS lapel pin. And one of these days, I want to make those OBS stickers. Oliver Camacho, where are we in the land of tennis? For those who maybe haven't been following.
Well, the Indian Wells Masters event just ended yesterday. We're recording on Monday.
That's right, in my homestead,
nice.
Indian Wells.
And if Carlos Alcaraz, the 19-year-old, if the 19-year-old Carlos Alcaraz plays like he did in this tournament, he will end the year as number one. He's already reclaimed the number one spot. The only person, in my opinion, standing in his way is Novak Djokovic. It was insane. It was a masterclass. And the final, he put away Daniil Medvedev, who was undefeated for 19 matches in 2 sets. I think it was 6-4, 6-3 or something like that. It was an embarrassing showing for Daniil Medvedev. But it was very exciting to watch this kid. He's got everything. He's creative. He has all the shots, the athleticism, the confidence. It's really remarkable.
He's basically Michael Rice.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, right, Oliver?
I mean, just 3 times as young, or 3 times younger. So
probably
Michael
4
Rice,
times younger.
So great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Hey there, Georgie boy. Flying through the sky, so fancy free.
Awesome, man. You were just in Chicago.
I was.
But you're not now.
No, I'm not. I'm based in Long Beach, but I'm from Chicago originally, and I had to go out for my grandmother passed away 100 years and change.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
So staying down on the south side, I was at the Hilton at like 95th and Cicero. I don't know if you know that area.
It's
Did you come down
Indiana.
for some Portillo's or some Al's beef?
No, because I was with my brother who has celiac, so he's the worst person to go to Chicago with. I can't get a hot dog. I can't get an Italian beef. I can't get a tavern-style pizza with him, as much as I love my brother. But it was nice to see extended family and that sort of thing and kind of drink in that area that I remember very well from my youth.
That's awesome.
Drink as in take in the area, not
take. Yeah, no more drinking.
Have a beverage in the area.
Yeah.
No more Miller Lite for me.
How about the Malort? No more Malort.
No, none of that.
Yikes.
On the straight and narrow path, my Georgie boy, my friend.
How about some Opera Now? The granddaddy of them all. It's just like the Rose Bowl. Opera Now, granddaddy of them all.
Certainly as decrepit as the Rose Bowl is, and terrible seats, but yeah, we're back. operanowpodcast.com. We've been doing some shows over the last couple of months regularly, so we're almost at 300.
Yeah,
295, I think so. But thank you, George. I feel bad. With Ashley and Wesley passing away. I've got a lot of big shoes to fill, so I hope to honor their memory. Let's do a great show, guys. Let's do a great show.
It's on the employee handbook, basically.
They were so beautiful, the two of them. Oh my god!
yeah. But Matt Cummings was not beautiful. I'm getting the
he's
sense
lovely.
of that.
Sitting in he's the one sitting in the closet, right?
No, that's Weston.
No, that's Weston.
That is Wesley.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt's the one that knows everything. Actually,
Wesley. I know his name is Weston, but I like saying Wesley.
Matt actually, I think, knows more about opera than I do. I will say that, and
that's true. He knows because he sits in that closet all the time.
That's big of you, Oliver.
He does nothing but listen to opera in a closet.
Yeah. March Madness it's mad. A 16 seed.
Oh my God,
beats
Purdue,
a 1 seed.
Farley Dickinson beating Purdue. That was insane.
Crazy. It's the second time ever a 16 seed has beat a 1 seed.
And then who beat Virginia?
Princeton
Virginia was the other number one, right?
Yeah, Virginia also.
Who beat Virginia? I forget.
Didn't last year's KC champions win? I don't know how to say it.
But two number one seeds have been thrown out.
Yeah, Virginia was a 4 seed, and they were beaten by Furman.
Okay.
I don't think I could tell you where Furman is.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to figure out some sort of opera tie-in to the bracket. I'm gonna dream about that right now.
Next episode,
we're gonna talk some opera.
Free throw.
Earlier today, a galvanizing article was published on Early Music America. I know that's not everybody's first news source for opera, but it does relate to singers, especially those who are trying to have more comprehensive careers doing, ensemble and choral singing in addition to their solo careers. That article was penned by none other than friend of the show, countertenor, and conductor of his own ensemble called Altera, countertenor Christopher Lowry.
There he is.
Before we hear his free throw on the English choral tradition, let's listen to a little bit of his ensemble singing Boulalo from Britain's Ceremony of Carols with male soprano soloist Eli McCormick. Just a little bit of a professional choral ensemble called Altera, which is based in Providence, Rhode Island, and is directed by friend of the show and our former guest, countertenor Christopher Lowry. Welcome back to Opera Box Score.
Thank you for having me, Oliver. It's a pleasure to be back with you.
Well, I wanted to get you on the show today because your article that was published earlier today, we're recording on Monday, has been galvanizing to this section of the singing community, which is, basically professional singers who do choral work while also trying to have, some kind of solo career, be it in concert music, song, opera, just this more like versatile singer, ones that aren't just specialists in choirs. And at the time of a recording, this article has only been published for about 7 hours, already been shared 14 times. I don't have the stats on how many impressions it has made so far, but people who have read this strongly agree with what you have to say here. So let's begin. What is the thesis of this article that's published in Early Music America?
Well, I just had been seeing a lot of, I think, genuine and well-intentioned sort of hit pieces on social media recently about the English choral tradition in general. And I mean, from my perspective, I really do understand where a lot of this comes from. There has been a history, especially in this country, where we're at a sort of a remove from the tradition to some degree, at least geographically, to kind of take some of the superficial lessons of the tradition and apply those aesthetics to all kinds of choirs, indiscriminately. And a lot of that has led to burnout, among certain singers, very often sopranos who feel like they're at the mercy of conductors, often conductors who themselves aren't trained as singers, but in some cases even singers. And so I kind of wanted to wade into this really fraught topic by defending what I perceive to be, the virtues of the tradition and trying to focus our minds on separating out, criticisms of the tradition from misapplications of it. I noticed that a lot of people will go to because the historical roots of the Anglican tradition were in all male choirs, that by definition, the aesthetics that grew up in the tradition are misogynistic, and therefore, the English tradition itself is misogynistic. And I fundamentally disagree with that, at least as where it stands today. It's grown in so many really exciting directions over the last 50 years. And there's all types of ensembles using every kind of singer, from young to old, man, woman, NB, in between, whatever you want to think about. So I think it's a very broad church. And so I felt this piece kind of bubbling up inside me, and I just needed to kind of get it out.
I didn't even realize we were talking about like gender politics and misogyny. Yes, that's part of this article, but I'm really just concerned about what you have to say about especially sopranos, and just to be very explicit for people who aren't singers who are listening, how sopranos are obliged to sing straight tone in some of this music, and it's often very high, and it's often has very complex harmonies that need to be clearly delineated. And in order to do that, you need to have the voices not quote unquote oscillating so much in their pitch. And we have great examples of how this sounds like with groups like Voces 8, for example, which you cite here, which is one of my favorite groups. And I know them. And Andrea, the soprano one, she just has this freakish talent. She's brilliant that she can just sing, above the staff all night long, and it sounds gloriously in tune, and she doesn't seem to get tired.
Yeah, I completely agree with your characterization there, using the word freakish. In the best sense. And I did get into that a little bit. I think that basically there is something to talking about the amount of vibrato that is being used in choral music, especially higher up in the voice parts. I don't think it can be rigidly applied to every situation and every type of ensemble, but in a certain kind of very elite English style choir, or a very elite early music group, for example, the amount of vibrato does need to be sort of managed, if you like. And I use that word because management of vibrato can be something that's kind of dynamic and active. A singer sort of knows when they can use vibrato, how much of it they can use, when it's necessary for their vocal health versus, the harmonic progression or the tuning of the chords, et cetera, et cetera. I think a lot of people that are working in different levels of choir or choirs in different contexts, choral societies, community choirs, church choirs, school choirs, they're often asked by their directors to just sing straight as if that's the beginning and the end of the conversation. Not taking into account that actually the people that can do absolutely straight tone singing or very close to straight tone singing for hours on end, especially higher up in the voice, are freaks. So basically what I wanted to say is there should be space in our conversation to allow for the freaks to flourish, and also for the rest of us human beings who are not born with those preternatural abilities to also think about these aesthetics intelligently and apply them to the degree that they make sense in that context.
Well, you sort of take a gentle jab at people who maybe don't even know what these real choirs sound like, but they only are familiar with them, through recordings or what they imagine they sound like, but not actually having experienced what it's like to be in one of these British groups that really have the tradition. Can you talk about your own experience as a singer who, you're a higher voice and you have a strong solo career. In fact, we're talking to you right now. You're in the middle of a recording project, which I don't know if we could talk about that, but you're in France right now. And, you have to be able to deploy everything in your toolkit to sing Handel, which you're often hired to sing. But then you do these ensemble things, this ensemble singing, where it's a different technique that you're using.
Yeah, I tried to talk a little bit in the article about, the different types of professional singer, and I sort of came up with, two categories for professional singer. One, sort of a generalist singer who can sort of their lives are centered in solo work, either in song or opera or concert work, and those who are really just choral specialists. And I think that a lot of the generalist singers, especially in the United States, because we don't have a huge group of choral specialist singers, they're able to kind of scale up and scale down their instrument in various ways when they're doing choral work versus when they're being soloists. Myself, I would include in that group of people. But what I wanted to say was that sometimes I see in the conversation that there's a one-size-fits-all mentality about vocal pedagogy in the United States specifically, saying that the generalist way of singing is the right way, the one way, the only way. And I just kind of wanted to gently push back on that and say, no, actually, in fact, some of the choral specialists who sing in a different way sometimes without, pure bel canto technique, their way is valid too. And they have an instrument that favors using their voice in this way. And I think that in my experience singing on both sides of the Atlantic, I grew up singing in a sort of Anglican light tradition in the US, and then I moved to the UK, and I was a choral scholar and did the whole professional choral scene for quite a while in London. One of the things that we're not talking about here is that in these groups that are supposedly, just about straight singing, they're not at all. There's a huge amount of efficient tone that's constantly being generated by every single one of the singers in a group like Tenebrae, for example, or Polyphony that I had a privilege to work with many years ago. And there's a huge carpet of bass sonority over which any individual voice can sympathetically resonate. So my experience as a singer working in that context is, despite all the precision and the obsessive focus on seeking perfect intonation and blend, because there's this fantastic sort of buzzing sea of overtones, when you sing in this context, it really feels quite healthy, even to use less of the voice. It's about efficiency and efficiency and buzz, I guess. I don't know if that answers the question.
No. I mean, we're brushing up against a topic which you address in your article, Tenebrae Choir. You suggest that some of the singers in the treble section, in the sopranos and alto section, are younger, and maybe their youth accounts for their ability to recover more quickly, or maybe they don't have such a large vibrato when you're that age.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a hard and fast rule. Okay, some of my best friends on the London scene are older, and they're still able to use these freakish abilities, if you like, or these specialized abilities. But it does seem to me that for the average person who might have slimmer, more supple voice when they're younger, a lot of times they'll age out of that. And, I think it's perfectly okay for that to be the case, in much the same way that dancers or athletes age out of their craft at some point, or at least they age out of the very, very elite level of their discipline. We should be okay with the fact that this is working in music as well, without resorting to saying that what is being sought, or what is being done in terms of that singing is quote unquote wrong. It's not necessarily wrong, and in fact, I don't think it is at all. So that said, I think a lot of people that go through this transition, whose voices become heavier, often more mature, and perhaps darker. There's a whole bunch of different ways the voice can develop with age, but that does seem to be the typical route that a lot of voices follow. I mean, it can be quite painful, I think, for singers who gave many years of service to choral music, especially elite choral music, to kind of face this change in their voice and see the amount of opportunities for them professionally diminish. But I also think it's an opportunity for them in a bunch of, one one way one could look at it is a bunch of new opportunities emerge in repertoires, ensembles, contexts that they weren't necessarily suited to when they were younger. So I just kind of wanted to say that out loud, because I know that, you know, I have a lot of friends who have gone through this, and they've found it really challenging and painful period of their lives. And I wanted them to feel as if they weren't alone. But at the same time, I don't think it's right to, you know, backwards reason that therefore, you know, the techniques that the younger singers are using are quote unquote wrong.
Before I let you go, I wanted to give you a chance to comment on the dismantling of the BBC singers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real tragedy, and I sincerely hope that it's not final and that there's a way to reverse it. I'm reading in the last few days that there might be a major boycott of the BBC Proms, which is the summer classical music festival that happens at the Royal Albert Hall every summer in London. And I do hope that people stick to their guns and put as much pressure on the BBC as possible to reverse this decision. I mean, BBC singers, you know, whether or not you know about them, I mean, they are truly the only full-time professional chorus in the UK. A lot of the choirs that we've been talking about on this podcast and that I mentioned in the article, they're essentially made up only of freelancers. They're not, you know, full-time salaried positions. And I know that a lot of young singers in the UK and elsewhere really look up to the BBC singers and aspire to their level of craft. So to see them go would do a huge disservice to this tradition everywhere in the world. So we're counting on you, BBC, to get this right.
The article is called "Let's Talk About the Choral Tradition." It's published on earlymusicamerica.org. It's a free web article. I encourage all of you to read it. Christopher Lowry, thank you so much for joining us on Opera Box Score.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks again to Christopher Lowry for joining us from France. He was recording a opera in Versailles, actually, and he was just on his break. So, but yeah, this article has been getting a lot of shares, and I'm sure by the time this episode drops, it will have been shared many more times. But Michael, what do you have to say about, well, Christopher Lowry? I'll let you say that something about him, but it doesn't really apply so much to bass voices, because bass voices don't have to be as precisely in tune as the higher up you go.
That's them's fighting words, Oliver. Certainly within recit, we have to hover around a C and a D where it's easy for a tenor or a soprano or a mezzo. But as far as Lowry, I mean, he is amazing. So my wife, Jennifer Rivera, has sung all over the world, and she was doing a production of Faramondo by Handel in Brisbane, directed by Paul Curran. And Chris Lowry was in that production. I don't recall his character's name, but he got up there when I heard him the first time. It was wonderful. Wow, this guy is really good. Great voice, great on stage. And I will add that my wife, Jennifer, received a coveted Helpman Award as Best Actress in an Opera in Australia. They're so far away, they have to have their own programs, I guess, and award systems. So, but Lowry is the real deal, man. I was blown away by him. He's fantastic.
Thanks again to Christopher for throwing a free throw our way. You can do the same too. Send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes about, say, straight tone singing or anything else that's on your mind. operaboxscore, gmail.com. Get the OBS beer coaster. Get the OBS lapel pin. Right now, get the 2-minute drill.
This just in. The 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Sonia Yoncheva has rejected the New York Times' comparison of her singing Norma to her colleague Angel Blue as Violetta in La Traviata. Yoncheva tweeted, "You see, Mr. Zachary Wolf from the New York Times had always written bitter critics about me since my very first appearances at the Met Opera, so this one was not a surprise."
Following Mr. Zachary Wolf's review and Yoncheva's complaint about the comparison, the Bulgarian diva returned to Twitter to complain about being constantly bullied on the internet. She then went on to clarify that the bullying wasn't referring to critics, but to other, quote, deranged people on online opera forums and social media. I'm speaking on the behalf of many colleagues of mine who are not willing to return to the Met because of these kind of writing.
The Met has been ordered via arbitration to pay Russian soprano Anna Netrebko more than $200,000 for performances it canceled after she declined to denounce Putin following the invasion of Ukraine. The arbiter ruled that the Met should compensate Netrebko for 13 canceled performances because of the, quote, pay-or-play contractual agreement, which requires institutions to pay performers even if they later decide not to engage them.
The Met has fired Yusuf Evazov from the current production of Tosca due to his association with Anna Netrebko. They are married. The company also cited potential conflict with Ukrainian soprano Lyudmila Monastyrska, singing the role of Tosca, and Evazov's criticism of Angel Blue when she canceled her performances at Arena de Verona in protest of the use of blackface. Peter Gelb said he, quote, had hoped Evazov would withdraw from the production. Matthew Polenzani has been announced as the replacement Cavaradossi.
After Arts Council England's chief executive Darren Henley tried to defend his decision to cut 30% from ENO's budget by suggesting that the future of opera might lie in the, quote, fresh thinking of opera in car parks, ENO's artistic director Annelies Miskemen told The Guardian, there is fear at the effect of cuts on talent, innovation, accessibility, and the future of the art form. You have internationally renowned UK talent because they've come through the ecosystem that supports artists at every stage. We're losing a whole generation of talent who cannot be sustained in this country.
Cleveland Orchestra's 23-24 season announcement has lots to offer fans of opera and vocal music. Highlights include soprano Lauren Snoofer in Mahler 4, countertenor Tim Mead in a world premiere by George Benjamin, friend of the show Barbara Hannigan conducting Haydn and Ligeti, baritone Simon Kinleyside in an all-Mahler program, and the Magic Flute with Julien Pregardien as Tamino.
Sir Derek Jacobi wonders where the big voices are. The acclaimed actor who is receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award at this year's Olivier Awards laments that the use of voice, the magic of voice, has all but disappeared in the theater. Not exactly a story about opera, but we'll connect the dots after the drill. Don't worry.
Last week, Teatro Real made history with not a world premiere, but a metaverse premiere of Shostakovich's The Nose. It was a Barry Kosky production performed in the Royal Meta Theatre, a 3D replica of the Teatro Real located in Utopion. The first Spanish metaverse.
Don't lose it, George.
No word yet if any of the Avatar singers were bullied by a virtual critic.
Are you Michael Che or Colin Jost? I can't tell. Around 100 people who have experienced homelessness are to perform in a production organized by Streetwise Opera. Streetwise Opera Chief Executive Rachel Williams hopes to give agency and a feeling of ownership to her constituents with these performances as they, quote, celebrate the creativity and courage of those who have been homeless.
Legendary bass baritone, educator, and humanitarian activist Simon Estes has received the San Francisco Opera Medal, the company's highest honor.
It's a major award.
Estes said, opera is such an important form of art. It helps people all over the world because music is the international language that brings us all together.
Opera on Tap has announced the $500 winner of its TikTok composition competition. Laura Hobina Costa's I Am Lying in the Bed, which features mezzo-soprano Eugenia Forteza, who's also a writer for Classical Singer magazine. Hobina Costa is a New York City-based multicultural composer who is also part of this season's American Opera Initiative at Washington National Opera.
The finalists for the Opera House of the Future competition have been announced. The city of Dusseldorf aims to build not just a new opera house, but a lively and public space open to the entire city, offering a wide range of services. Finalist designs are on the OBS website, operaboxscore.com.
On the disabled list, well, hey, it's Sonia Yoncheva, who was replaced by Angela Mead in the title role of Norma last week at the Met. The cast change came days after Yoncheva criticized the New York Times for a review that compared her to Angel Blue, but you knew that already.
San Francisco Opera canceled the entire run of its portable adaptation of La Boheme due to heavy rains in the Bay Area. Boheme Out of the Box was supposed to be a 75-minute version of the Puccini classic. We wished we'd been able to do the show, said the company's managing director, but we didn't want to bring people out here and then have them be disappointed.
Exit stage right English opera director Tom Hawkes, who died in 85. Hawkes directed over 500 productions worldwide, served as the artistic director of Phoenix Opera, and worked with Opera Theater of St. Louis.
And on this day, March 20th, in 1680, it was the birth of Italian composer Emanuele d'Astorga in Sicily, also known as Gioacchino Cesare Rincon, everybody's favorite. In 1890, Italian tenor Beniamino Gigli was born. Also in 1890, Polish soprano Maria Jonowska was born. She created the role of Angela in Kurt Weill's The Tsar Has His Photograph Taken. And in 1915, on this day, March 20th, Ildebrando Pizzetti's Fedra premiered at La Scala.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
A little bit of Tosca, sung not by Ludmila Monostrowska, but our birthday girl, Maria Jonowska. That was a acoustic recording made in 1928 in German, Nur der Schönheit, as opposed to VC Darte, Nur der Schönheit. Anyway.
It's crazy. On the drill, like sometimes you get a bad week, sometimes you get a good week, sometimes you get a great week, and sometimes you get a Michael Rice week.
This is the bad week because I'm here.
Jacked and stacked.
I thought I was the bad week.
No, man. We're building up. We have so much to talk about. I cannot wait to get into it. We're gonna hustle right in. Sonia Yoncheva is basically dominating the drill this week. Oliver, what's going on? Where do we begin?
If you were just paying attention, to all the activity, it felt like there was one story after the next as it happened. And then, well, we're going to get to the Anna Trepko story, but it just felt like a really bad week for PR for the Met and to some extent the New York Times. So let's just start by saying that I personally don't think that Sonia Yoncheva is the type of diva yet who I want to hear sing Norma. Norma is the type of role you sing when you are like at the top of your game and, you're saying something about your career when you choose to sing Norma. So you open yourself up to criticism because, only really the greats even attempt to do it. It is probably the hardest and most comprehensive role in the bel canto repertory. Mm-hmm. So I think she did it to herself. She was
miscast.
Well, I mean, I don't know who you blame, her managers or Peter Gelb or herself for thinking that, she's ready to do it. I mean, she's doing it and, she's getting through each performance, but the criticisms are the criticisms one would hear when trying to sing this role. So maybe Zachary Wolfe, his misstep was, trying to compare two sopranos in the same review.
But they're different roles.
Yeah, Michael, you're about to say.
I've always found since his early day, Zachary Wolfe is a weasel.
Oof.
And I don't like him as a critic.
Okay.
Go on.
He just is. I long for the days of, so in my research, Wolfe is not necessarily an experienced musician. So he replaced essentially Tomasini.
Right.
Tomasini wasn't the chief music critic, but he was doing opera. And look, Tomasini was a piano player. And a lot of his reviews, to some degree, were like, it wasn't great, but they did a good job.
But you always used to say that Tomasini was a butt boy for the Met.
Well, he was, but we can't say that on this show.
Yes,
just because my voice cut that wet 3, 2, 1 click. This is a clean show, Oliver. I just like what's the problem I have with Wolfe is that he often says things, he often addresses things he doesn't need to, and he leaves out things that he should address in his reviews.
Well, for me, the point is that Yoncheva should have a thicker skin. I know singing Norma is
of course, aside from... I'm sorry, Oliver, go ahead.
But it's so hard to sing this role.
It's Norma. That's crazy.
If you're going to do it, you better have a thick skin because you're going to be compared to...
But why bring up Angel Blue in a different production of a show?
It's apples and oranges.
Thank
you.
Booyah.
Oh, dang, man.
This is why we lead podcasts, George. This is why we do it.
Here, you know.
So anyway, so she.
Well, let George. Hold on. Let George. George had something to say.
Look. It's the first principle when you get into the arts is if you believe the good reviews, you got to believe the bad ones too. And if you don't like it, then just ignore it and don't pay any attention. Or get out of the business. Just go read the sports section.
Well, I mean, clearly, it stung. And I understand why it would sting because it's a really hard endeavor to take on this role, especially after being praised unanimously for her performances in Fedora earlier this season. I think it really was hurtful for her to get such negative feedback about her Norma. And of course, there's, as she said, there are these forums and these on social media where people are just like tearing her apart because she's not doing what XYZ singer did in Norma, So it would seem that her tweet about being bullied was talking about Zachary Wolf, but then somebody came out and said, "Why are you reading your reviews?" And then she she went back and said, "No, I'm talking about these deranged people on the internet."
Yeah, I think it is the something like this is probably the best correlation, George and Oliver, to this notion of sports and opera. If you're riding high and hitting 375 all the time, great. But then, loser, struck out. He blew it, and the press gets crazy after you.
Yes.
And it is really like, especially at that level, I'm not talking about like a regional, like Kansas City or Phoenix, somebody doing a show. But if you're singing at the opera and you're this person, again, nothing against her, but there's especially if you're singing in New York, or if you're playing for the Yankees or the Mets or the Rangers or the Islanders or the Devil, even if they don't even give coverage to the Devils in New York, they hate the Devils. It's this high wire act. You're playing in the premier media league, whatever it is, and if you don't deliver for whatever reason, and even if you do deliver, they're going to go after you.
She needs to take a page out of every NHL team from Canada's hockey coach when they're in the post-game press conference, win or lose, those guys all say the same thing, which is basically, we just want to put pucks on nets, basically, and have real quick changes.
We didn't forecheck enough this day, but we'll do more forecheck in the next episode.
Sometimes we're just going to keep our heads down and play our game, keep our noses clean, and we're just going to go on to play.
Oh, yeah. George, yeah.
So after all of this happened, like the next day, we find out that she pulls out of performance of Norma. Yikes. And that didn't sound like she was sick. It just felt like, I'm butthurt right now, so I'm gonna let you guys
Oliver, keep the language clean, please, sir.
Yeah. So moving on, more PR nightmare for the Met.
Anna Netrebko, Michael, you read this story. Kick it off for us. $200,000.
Yeah. So when this happened, I can't believe it was only about a year ago. It feels like it was as long as COVID that. Putin, and Russia came in to. I mean, the whole thing is. I remember whatever it was, like 8 years ago, when they went into Crimea, and I'm like, is this the 21st century where countries are in? It's like, Prussia annexing Alsace-Lorraine in like the 1870s or whatever the hell that happened.
Yeah.
I thought we were in a more modern society.
Nope.
But no, it's true. So, and as much as contrary to public belief, I am anti-Putin. And I think, invading Ukraine is crazy. But at the same time, when it happened, I thought to myself, so you're going to tell this person that unless you denounce Vladimir Putin, we are going to cancel your contract. And I thought, well, whatever I feel about it morally, you're going to have to pay this person. This person is owed contracts. Money. Yeah, you can't cancel somebody because of differing political belief, despite what it is. So just the numbers and sense of it is like, oh, this is at some point this is going to come out that they had to pay her off because they canceled it for no real practical reason. So that's my take on it.
Shirley Gelb, who
don't call me Shirley,
I'm not a big fan of, but he's no dummy. He must have done the math and been like, probably we're going to end up paying this, and it is worth it to me and to the face of the organization and the statement that it makes to spend $200,000 putting our foot down.
It's good PR in a way because of that. But also, I think there would have been protests if she was able to fulfill her contracts. They would have lost ticket revenue probably because of it. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm not in any way aligning with her, but I knew the fact that they had to pay her off, or not even pay her off. They had to honor some level of the contract. Makes perfect sense.
So do you think they're going to have to pay off Yusuf Avazov for canceling his contract?
Possibly. Well, I think they said they hoped he would withdraw, which means I hope we don't have to pay them or pay him. But even like, who was the guy with the he had the swastikas, Yevgeny Nitkin, who had the swastikas on his arm? Yeah. Even that, I bet he got paid too. They probably gave him some or all of whatever contract he was under, and it never became public. Again, he said like in Nitkin's case, he was in a metal band, whatever. But like even within Trepko, Putin's not a great. There's a great like bootleg recording. Buddy Guy, he's a jazz drummer, and people may know this reference from Seinfeld. There's a recording of him like going on and on about his road crew, and he's swearing up a storm, and it's terrible. And then somebody mentions one person on the team, and he's like, "Yo, this guy, this is not my kind of guy." and that's Putin is not our kind of guy, but at the same time, you have to honor a contract. You can't just cancel. You can't just not even cancel somebody, but cancel a contract is what I'm saying.
Oliver, is Derek Jacobi your kind of guy? Now that you know how to say his name.
It's just interesting that this thing is happening in theater, and he's basically talking about, in this article in The Guardian, he's talking about how the new plays, and especially the emphasis on, stage technology, is making standard rep sort of fall by the wayside, and the people who can really elocute and project Shakespeare or whatever, like those types of actors are becoming scarce, which has a parallel in opera. I mean, like we're doing less, Verismo, we're doing less, of like 19th century repertoire that requires, solid technique and like a lot of projection. We're doing more 20th century opera. Some of it is amplified. We're doing more Baroque opera. You don't need to have that big of a voice. You need more agility, So we're sort of in this cycle right now where we are in danger of, losing the pipeline for those voices that need to sing standard repertoire, that need to sing lyrical lines, that need to, do the baby Wagner the blonde roles and then move into the, the Brunhildes. And like, that's why people get so excited about a singer like Lisa Davidson, who seems like to come out of nowhere. People say it's like a once in a lifetime voice, 1 in a million voice, because they're just not used to hearing a loud voice that just cuts over an orchestra easily anymore.
Well, I think that's been the thing that people have talked about for many years. Where have the voices gone? Where are the Riesenecks? Where are the Cornell McNeils or the Robert Merrills or the Tebaldis even? And not to say that they're not good singers out there, but that is certainly something that people have wondered about in terms of traditional repertoire versus newer repertoire. And even the Met is saying, screw that, we're doing new stuff now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was ticket sales. The hours outsold, what was it, the French 5-act 9-hour Don Carlos.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
But you're going to have people that are like on the fanzines and the websites who are like, where are these people now, and why don't we? That's a huge question just about training. You used to be able to, you were training and you'd work with the teacher 4 days a week or 5 days a week. And now you're pumping out, voice majors more so than ever before within like the university
we have more
system.
voice majors than we have engineers in the U.S.
I know.
But we have more voice majors with smaller voices? Is that what we're heading?
It's a different, I think to some degree, and Oliver, we've talked about this many times, since we were both like 19 years old.
Yeah, even then.
The American singers it's always been that they're very facile. They can move within different genres, within different repertory, within different languages. And that's fine, but you wonder, and a good friend of mine and of Oliver's, I don't know if they were good friends, Kevin Keyes, was always very old school baritone about the big voices. And I agree to him to some degree, and partially I thought, maybe you got to calm down a little bit. But that idea of nurturing a voice and building a voice to sing this larger rep, Wagner or like large Verdi or Verismo, those kinds of things. But that's nothing new. I mean, people, I think, have been complaining about that for quite a while.
Yeah.
But George, to get back to your point, there are more teachers now who are teaching singing that don't have the same experience, that don't have careers themselves on the stage. It's just like they went to school, they got a doctorate so they could teach, and they have no idea what it means to sing on the stage of the Met, you know?
Well, and if the repertoire of contemporary American composition is moving more into chamber opera so that it's more likely it's going to be produced and produced again and again, we're working with smaller ensembles of instruments so people don't have to sing as loud, right?
That could
if you
be.
Just look at the acoustics of it.
You know, I will say in reference to Sir Derek, I think it was about 8 years ago, I saw a play called Jerusalem by Jez Butterworth and
Huge
Mark
hit in
Rylance.
West End. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Mark Rylance, some of people, like he was the cutter. There's a movie, you know him from films, and he plays this kind of down on his luck person living in a trailer in the woods of like England somewhere. And there's like a whole 15-minute final scene where he's alone. And his voice blew, and he's a small man. He's not a large man.
That's true.
It was the most visceral thing I have ever seen in my life on stage, whether it's theater or an opera. He just filled this theater. It was amazing, and nobody moved.
Yeah.
And he would just scream at the top of his lungs and have these things, and then he'd move down to a lower, and then it was... So, again, that was 8 years ago. Maybe Sir Derek thinks that it stopped a couple of years ago. But they're out there. Somebody like Rylance is out
They're
there.
out there. Apparently the future is out there, and the future is now. I could barely get through this story at the Teatro Real. Listen, I'm gonna say this. I love Shostakovich. I love Barry Kosky. The Utopion, the first Spanish metaverse, this is utter nonsense. I repeat, I will never see this, and I will never create this. I do not get it, I don't understand it, and I don't like it.
Take that, America.
It's
and
fine
opera.
that you don't understand, you don't get it, but you know,
Here we go.
if we are going to go forward with opera and the metaverse becomes a thing, which it could become a thing.
It's not going to become a thing.
It's not. Facebook is doomed.
It's not going to become a thing.
Zucker nerd bet on the wrong horse.
Yeah, I know,
Well,
and I don't know my social medias and all that, but it's not going to become.
I would like for there to be a representation of the arts, the performing arts, in the metaverse if it's going to happen. So
okay.
I mean, when we were during the lockdown, when we were all on Zoom, we were in essence creating the pathway for needing this type of thing. All this, you know, recording.
It didn't take, Oliver. It didn't have any staying power.
It didn't have any staying power, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be another catastrophe in the future, and we don't need to figure out a path to producing art.
There's plenty of other pandemics that'll lock us up again. Don't
What
worry,
about the
George,
mushroom?
come on.
The mushroom, the cordyceps, you know?
Cordyceps, they're in the brain.
Scabies. It's all going to be scabies.
Shoot,
make
shoot,
sure
shoot.
Make sure you go to the website, operaboxscore.com. You can click on the link to this article. Look at some of the final contenders for the new opera house in Dusseldorf. Man, I don't know what to think.
This is the future of opera.
It's like they're all made out of matchsticks.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this.
I don't know,
mean,
man. One of them looks like the Guggenheim.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does a little bit. I don't know.
This one from the HPP Architekten. Oh, who looks like they're from Dusseldorf, actually. This looks pretty groovy. It's like these sort of concrete boxes with glowing sides to them. You don't need me to describe.
Okay, so if you're listening to this podcast, go to the show notes in your tab, and I'm gonna ask George to put the link actually in the show notes.
I will, baby.
So that people can click right on it and look at these pictures. Because for us to be talking about a picture is tough.
This is like this is the equivalent of smell-o-vision.
Yeah,
it's very evocative.
It's evocative.
Look, it's a tough order to make a new opera house, especially in Germany when it actually matters.
What's wrong with the old opera houses, I wonder?
Well, yes.
They look beautiful. They're like columns, and they fill up a
but are they
palazzo.
lively public spaces that offer a wide range of services?
They're normally like in a palazzo, so to speak. There's an open area in front.
Spielplatz.
I'm George is anti-future, it seems. Anyway,
no, that's been clear for a long time.
That is not true.
Whoa, sorry, I don't mean to raise that up.
That is not true. I'm not. You know me. I'm a progressive. Wait till you get my good call at the end of the show. Before we wrap up this seg, though, San Francisco Opera cancels the entire run of its portable adaptation of La Boheme due to heavy rains in the Bay Area. Climate chaos. It's real, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, they said they didn't want to be disappointed, but really they didn't want them to get wet, I think, ultimately was the problem.
It's very sports-like, being like, we can't.
It's a rain delay. Hey, we'll cancel this one.
Yeah.
Let's do 2 bohemes tomorrow. It's a great day for an opera. Let's do it. Let's play 2.
Ernie Banks. Love it.
He's the best.
Let's wrap this show up.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call is how we wrap up every show. Something great about the biz or something dreadful. Gonna start, as always, with Oliver Camacho.
I want to shout out, this is a good call, to the Swan Guy, who is an opera fanatic who went to, I think, every performance of Lohengrin wearing a
the guy with the head.
Yeah, a very striking swan costume. Like he gave himself like a black collar and then painted his face white and then put like a swan doll or a swan, on his head and was like walking around with like a chain. And so many people were like just fascinated by this, and like wanted their picture taken with him, including members of the Met Orchestra and the Orchard, Christine Goerke, and the Lohengrin, Piotr Bachawa. So if you look up, you'll find these pictures all over the internet or social media of the Swan Guy, who I have on good authority is the same guy who shows up at early music festivals dressed up as Louis XIV. He's got a career of showing up at performances in costume. Thank you, the Swan Guy, for making our experience more magical.
Michael Rice, what do you got? A good call or a bad call?
It actually just jumped into my head. I didn't have anything planned. So, friend of my show, at least, or Mark Thomas Ketterson. He is a critic and reviewer. Not critical, he's a reviewer. He reviews shows. Does a lot with Des Moines Opera in terms of going there every year. He went out to Kansas City to see The Shining, or as they say in The Simpsons, The Shinin'. And he was at the airport, and there were 2 people that were dressed as the crazy twins. Like a man and a woman with one had a beard, like a husband and wife, or boyfriend and girlfriend. Do you guys know the movie The Shining?
Yes.
So the twins who are at the end of the hallway, but this guy had like a long beard, and his wife or girlfriend, she was herself, but they had the same blue dress, and they were just standing in the Kansas City airport. And Mark kind of intimated that I think they're here to see The Shining. And I'll find a link to the picture. I'll send you guys the pictures. You can see it. It's the best. It's completely crazy, but it was off the top of my head.
And I'm going to go good call, bad call, worst call. So good call article in the New York Times before the weekend, which featured American opera directors Ted Huffman, Lydia Steyer, and R.B. Schlather. Good call is that these folks, 2 of whom I know well, are getting the press that they deserve for their work in these European opera houses and festivals. The bad call is, so now here in America, we are exporting our jobs overseas and our making of products overseas, and now we're exporting our art. This is some of the most beautiful production photographs I've seen, and we can't see them. How come these productions aren't being done in our country? That's what I want to know. The worst call is this film version of The Magic Flute. It was made in 2022. It's just come out now in this country. Executive produced by Roland Emmerich, of all people, who you might remember from such gems as The Day After Tomorrow and 2012. So this is a version of The Magic Flute, which is like part Harry Potter, and the main guy, played by, I forget his name, sort of goes into it's almost like a, dare I say, metaverse of the Magic Flute opera itself.
You hate that.
I was confused. Maybe I better go see it. That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Send us a voice memo, or you just email us your hot takes. operaboxscore@gmail.com. Find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. And hey, that's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS on the donate page. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Your audio editor is Weston Williams. For our guest co-host, Michael Rice, I'm George Cedarquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you revenge cancel your performance of Norma. We're back with an all-new show next week when we celebrate baseball's opening day the opera way. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more opera in car parks and pubs and on your tablet. Join us.